So the next step in our workflow is to actually block out our composition and make sure that we have a rough idea as to the animation that we're going to be creating. If you've been paying attention to anything up to this point, I'm sure you realize that layers and compositions have a direct relationship between each other. So we're actually going to be using these layers to adjust the timing of how these graphics appear. And we're also going to, in essence, build our initial animation for our comp by making adjustments to these layers. So to get started, let's just go ahead and scrub with our current time indicator just so we can see exactly what's happening here. So we have background video footage with a bunch of graphics over top of that footage. So the first thing I want to actually do is make sure that I have all the graphics in the scene that I think I might need. And as I'm looking at it, I don't. So let's go to the graphics folder, and in here is my H+ Sport logo. I want to add like a station identifier here in the lower right corner. So let's go ahead and drag that AI Sport file right into the composition panel and then let go. Notice this is extraordinarily large, so position it over towards the right side of the screen and then press S to open up the scale parameters. You could also just open up the options for layer 1 and make sure that you're under the transform section, and here is scale. I much prefer using the keyboard shortcut, so I'm just going to press S, and that way I know I'm only looking at the scale. Now I can just click and drag on that parameter to scale it, and notice since the anchor point is in the middle of my H, it's scaling around that anchor point. Now when you're positioning graphics, if you think it might ever go to air or broadcast, you want to go down here to the lower left portion of the composition panel. Go ahead and click on that button and choose Title Action Safe. Any text or graphics you want to make sure is inside this second rectangular box. Any graphic elements that you don't want cut off, you want it to be inside this outermost box. These two thinner boxes here are used when you're trying to convert standard def footage into HD footage or the transition back and forth between each. So sometimes if you know this is going to go to standard def, you want to make sure your graphics are in there as well. But honestly, the ones you need to pay most attention to are just these two outer ones. So let's position it safely within this second rectangle, and then we can go ahead and turn Title and Action Safe off. Now we have our H+ logo set up. In order to blend it better into the background, I want to change its opacity. So I'm going to press T to open up opacity and just drag the opacity for that logo down a little bit. Let's drag it down to around 38%. Now we have a nice identifier here in the corner. Now, I want to start with clean video footage. So none of the graphics are supposed to be here. They're going to fade in over time. And we'll go ahead and have those fade in with keyframes in a little bit. But let's look at how our graphics are built. Notice for our background video, it's layer 11. If we go to layer 10 and toggle its visibility off and on, you can see that's the color layer that we're going to fade in and out. So I do want that to start here at the beginning of the comp because this is when I want it to actually start its fade. But I don't want any of these swooshes and pluses and any of this other stuff to start until a little bit later. So I'm going to move down to about 1 second in the timeline, and then I'll go ahead and select all of the plus layers. So layer 7, and then hold down Shift and click through layer 4. Now with all 4 of those layers selected, let's go ahead and click and drag on the left side of that layer to move it to my current time indicator. And if you hold down Shift as it moves, it'll go ahead and snap. So now we've easily trimmed all 4 of those layers to start at the same point. Now we're going to fade these in all at different times, but I'll give you a technique how to best do that a little later when we get to keyframing. Right now we're just trying to block out the appearance of everything. We'll have the pluses fade in, and I want this swoosh to actually wipe across the screen to appear. So I want the swoosh to start at about 2 seconds. Let's go down to layer 9, and I keep calling it swoosh. It's labeled the swoop lines layer. So if we turn the visibility off and on, you can see that there. And instead of just clicking and dragging, this time I want to use a keyboard shortcut. Let's hold down Option on the Mac or Alt on Windows, and then press the left bracket key. As long as layer 9 is selected, it'll automatically trim that layer. So left bracket will trim the in point, the right bracket will trim the out point, again, as long as you're holding Alt or Option. So now if we scrub through, you can see, okay, I've got my colors, and then I have my pluses fade in, and then we have the swooshes come in. Let's go ahead and have the word training fade in right at about 3 seconds. So we'll move to 3 seconds, and we can use the same shortcut command, but let's go ahead and select layer 3 and 2, and then press Option or Alt left bracket. Now we've trimmed the start point of those layers. Now I want all of these graphics pretty much to disappear by about 8 seconds, and then we're going to have another graphic appear telling us what video is coming up next. So let's move down to about 8 seconds here. Now let's select most of the layers. Let's start with layer 2 and then scroll down and hold down Shift and click on layer 9. So to trim the out point of all these layers, we'll hold down Option and then right bracket or Alt right bracket. Now all these layers will disappear and we're just left with the color wash and our logo. And of course, we'll add text in a little bit later. But for now, we've built our initial composition. We have our background video, we have our graphics that are going to be appearing, and we have a general sense of the timing when we're ready to introduce keyframes. And of course, that is a teaser for the next video that we'll be jumping into, keyframing.